Hey folks, welcome back to Selenium WebDriver series. In this video, let's talk about the different types of path access that are there. So, certain cases you might not be able to find a particular element because it is not having any attributes. Okay, that case, or if certain element is not visible at certain point. Okay, so then you can find those elements using its neighbor nodes. Okay, so that is the reason we can find it using this XPath access. So basically, you can identify particular element using its parent or ancestor or children. Okay, based on the different relationship, we are able to find the element. Okay, so that is where XPath access comes into picture. So before we begin, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. So these XPath access allows us to select elements based on their relationship to the currently selected element or elements given the XPath expression when the access is invoked. Okay, so basically, it all starts with one particular node. Okay, let's call it as a self node. Considering this figure, here you can see that this self node, there is a one particular node, we can name it as a self node. Imagine one particular element you are able to find. Okay, so using this self node, okay, if I want to identify the parent node, how I can navigate is after giving the self node, give the parent node. Okay, so that's how you will be able to identify the parent node of the element. Okay. So there are different terms. Okay. So first let's understand them. First is the ancestor. So using the ancestor, okay, it selects the current node ancestor, current nodes, ancestor nodes. Okay. Ancestor nodes is nothing but parent's parent. Okay. When you want to identify the parent's parent element, then ancestor is used. Ancestor or self selects all the ancestors of the current node, including the node itself. Okay, attribute. Basically, attribute it selects the attribute of the current node. It is a normal attribute. So, child selects all child nodes of the current node for a particular node. If there are children's child nodes, okay, so it will identify them. Descendant. It select all the descendant nodes, the children and then grandchildren of the current node. Okay. So following, it selects all the nodes that come after the current node in the document. Okay. Excluding the any descendants are there. It will after that particular node, whatever or are the following nodes are present, it will identify them. So sibling. Okay, following sibling is there, and the namespace is there, parent is there, preceding is there, preceding sibling, and then self. Okay, so these are the different axes that are present. So now we'll go back to the diagram. So here, if you see, okay, let's take the marker. So this is the self node. Okay, so from the self node, you can identify its parent node. Okay, if you want to identify the parent's parent, then it will be an ancestor. Okay, so from the self node itself, you can identify the child node as well. So for this particular self node, there are four different childrens are there if you see. Okay, so this is the child node. These four are the child node for this self. And if you want to identify the child's children, child's child, then it will become descendant. Okay, so overall, from this self node to descendant, it will become descendant or self. When you give descendant or self, it identifies its child and then its descendant. Okay, so that is how you can say descendant or self work. So here the base or the main thing is the self node. Okay, one particular node should be proper. You should be able to identify that node. Then only you can traverse from that node to its parent or its children wherever you want. And there is something called preceding sibling. Okay, for this node, if you see, okay, this node, particular node, okay, is the child of this node. You can call it as P node. Okay, so for this P node, you see that there are how many children? One, two, three, four, five. So there are five children for this P node. And if you want to identify the child which is in the this corner, in the left side, correct? In the left side of the self node, then it will be called as preceding sibling. You can use the preceding sibling keyword, identify from this node to this node. Okay. And from this self node, if you want to identify the following, the which is in the right side of the node, then you can say that following sibling. So this will identify its following next coming node. Okay. So whole of this is, you can if you say following for the self node, whatever are the following nodes are there, okay, it will identify all of them. Okay, all these nodes. When you say preceding, it identifies all these nodes. Okay, you have to specify which actual node you want to identify. So, and whole of this from ancestor will self. It is called as ancestor or self because it identifies its ancestor to the from the self to ancestors. Okay, including the parent. So this is how the different access are there in the Selenium or XPath. Okay, so let's see it practically now. Let's log into Orange HRM. Admin, okay. So here, let's take an example of this. Punch out these things, okay, these elements. Let's inspect them, okay. If I identify this punched out, okay, and I want to identify this orange HRM, okay, this complete orange HRM attendance. I mean, this portion. I want to identify this portion using this children. Is it possible? Yeah, we will identify and try. So this is a p tag, okay, double slash p using the paragraph tag and then class attribute, provide the value. First, we will identify the self. This is the self node, correct? So if you give slash self, okay, colon, so what would be the self of this? If it would be p. If you give div, what will happen? It won't be able to identify because it is the self itself is the current node itself. Whatever the current node is there, that itself is the self node. Okay. Now I want to identify the parent of it. The parent of this P node is div, correct? So I'll give this div. How? Using parent. I'll say parent colon double colon and then give the div. So this is how it identifies that there is one parent element for this particular P node. So first you identify the node from which you want to traverse. Okay, you identify this child node. From this child node, you traverse it to the parent node. Okay, so this is how you can identify the parent of it. And next is we'll identify it using the ancestor. So when you say ancestors, there are 11 ancestors for this parent. Okay, so there are so many. But what if I want to identify a particular here, if you go here and then okay, if I want to identify this particular or this particular section. Correct. That is what our intention is, right? So if I want to identify this, so give the index of it. Let's say, is it at the first position? No, it is at the second position. Correct. So this is how you will be able to identify its ancestor as well. Ancestor is parent, parent. Okay. But it will identify all the ancestors. You have to specify which, because there are multiple elements got matched, you have to specify it in the index, which particular you are identifying. Okay. So this is how the ancestor works. Okay. So now let's talk about the children. Okay. So here for this, what is the child? So this is already a child, right? So p tag, whatever I'm saying, is already the child. So, but I'll take this, okay, div as the parent node now, okay, div, and then give that class name here. Okay, so it identified one element. Here, for this, see how many children are there. So there are many, more than two children are there for this. Okay, if I give slash child, okay, and then div, it returned two. Basically, there are two children for this, correct? So in this, if I want to identify first element, so then you can provide first. Otherwise, there is another. Okay, let's give one seconds. Okay, first. So we traverse till here. Okay, now I want to traverse from here to here. So what if it is the child's child? Then it will be the correct. It will be descendant. Descent. Okay. So it's descendant, it identified. It is not descendant is not this, descendant is P. So it identified the section that we are looking for. Okay, you can specify it as whatever the index is, one, or you can identify two based on your requirement. So now when you say descendant or self, okay, so it will identify um, from the root node to the descendant, all the whatever, if I say div, okay, so all the divs from the parent to uh, child, and then from child to from node to parent to child, everything it will identify. Sorry, node to child. Okay, so this is how descendant or self works. Now whatever left is, we will see how does what are the things the preceding works. If I say preceding, okay, so it will identify all the preceding, whatever are the before, the one which are before this current node. It identifies the elements, the divs which are above, basically above this div, okay, root node. So it identifies everything. Okay, so based on this, you can identify. So suppose say there are 16 of the divs it identified. Okay, there are so many. Okay, it identified. Uh, so what I want to identify is the first one, whatever matches. So it identified time at work. So this is the one. If I give two, so it will identify the next section here. If I give three, what intention, I mean, what element we are going to identify, we can identify that. Okay, so this is how preceding works. If I just give the preceding sibling, what happens is, so there are no preceding sibling for this, correct? So let's identify, first let's remove this and identify. Okay, okay, so this is the one which we are identified, which we have identified. So if I want to identify its sibling, there are no siblings for this. But for this, we have sibling. Okay, if I identify uh, this or this, I can identify its preceding sibling. If it is preceding, then I have to identify this. Okay, I'll give this and then I'll say preceding div of this. Preceding sibling, okay, div. So it identified the preceding sibling of it. Okay, so there is only one element it identified. But what if there are no following sibling for this? Okay, so if I give following, so it won't be able to identify because there is no other sibling present for this thing. Okay, so that is how the preceding and then the following, all the siblings, and then these things will work. So hope you got to know how this actual concept is. So you try other access by yourself and let me know if you have any other questions or doubts in the comment section. If you have liked this video, please do like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.